Long ago, people built things we still can't explain. Huge stones, strange symbols, and perfect star maps, all made without modern tools. Who were they? What did they know? And why did they leave so many questions behind? The vanished builders of Göbekli Tepe. Hidden beneath layers of earth in southeastern Turkey lies a place that shouldn't exist, at least not according to everything we thought we knew about early civilization. Göbekli Tepe isn't just another archaeological site, it's a 12,000-year-old temple complex, predating Stonehenge by over 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by more than 7,000. It was built before the invention of writing, before the domestication of animals, before cities, before the wheel, and yet somehow it's real. Towering stone pillars arranged in massive circles, some weighing up to 20 tons, stand here in eerie silence, carved with intricate animal reliefs. Lions, snakes, birds, scorpions, they tell stories we can't translate. The biggest mystery? We have no idea who built it. The people of that era were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers, scattered in small tribes, focused on survival. According to conventional history, humans didn't start creating monumental architecture until long after agriculture had taken hold and permanent settlements had been formed. But Göbekli Tepe upends that logic. Here was a structure of such size and complexity that it must have taken hundreds of workers and extraordinary planning. But why build a temple before a village? Some believe this site proves that religion or some shared belief was the glue that formed civilization, that perhaps spiritual purpose came first and society followed. But even that idea raises a deeper, stranger question. Where did these ideas come from in the first place? The precision of the stonework is baffling. T-shaped pillars perfectly aligned with astronomical points, stones cut and transported from miles away without wheels or beasts of burden. These weren't crude attempts at construction. These were masterful. And then there's the deliberate burial. Sometime around 8000 BCE, the site was intentionally buried. Entire circles of stone pillars were carefully covered with dirt and debris. Not destroyed, not eroded by time, but methodically hidden. Why would anyone do that? Was it a cultural shift, a fading religion, or an emergency act of preservation? Or was something darker at play, an attempt to seal away knowledge? The site was first noted in the 1960s, but the true excavation didn't begin until the 1990s. What archaeologists found stunned the world. The deeper they dug, the older the stones became. Layers of time stacked upon each other, revealing an even greater complexity the further they went. But there were no signs of domestic life, no ovens, no tools for farming, no homes. It was purely ritualistic, and that perhaps is what makes it so alien. Even today, only a small fraction of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar suggests that many more rings of stone are buried beneath the earth. Each one could hold new carvings, new alignments, new symbols we can't decode. Could they tell us who built this place, and why? Or will they deepen the enigma? Some theorists go further, much further. They point to the sudden appearance of advanced construction techniques at the site as evidence of lost knowledge, or even contact with a forgotten, more developed civilization. There are whispers of Atlantis, of pre-Ice Age cultures, with wisdom wiped clean by global cataclysm. Others even suggest the unthinkable, that ancient humans had help from entities not of this earth. And while mainstream scholars might dismiss such ideas, they can't fully explain the facts. There are no known precursors to this architecture. It appears out of nowhere, with no evolutionary buildup, and just as mysteriously, it ends. After Göbekli Tepe was buried, there's no record of the builders, no similar structures, no transitional phase. It's as if the knowledge to create it simply disappeared, vanished into the sand. If this was the birth of religion, or the origin of civilization itself, it's a birth cloaked in silence. Göbekli Tepe stands as a riddle carved in stone, challenging our linear view of history. Who were these people who moved mountains with nothing but stone tools and their will? What drove them to build monuments that would last for eternity, only to hide them? And most haunting of all, what other truths are still buried, waiting to be unearthed? The Indus Valley's silent script. Flowing along the ancient Indus River, an entire civilization rose and fell without ever whispering a word we can understand. The Indus Valley civilization, also called Harappan, was one of the world's great Bronze Age cultures, flourishing between 2600 and 1900 BCE. At its height, it stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, boasting advanced urban planning, sanitation systems, standardized weights, and bustling trade with Mesopotamia. Yet unlike Egypt or Sumer, The Indus people left behind no kings, no grand tombs, no bloody war records, just ruins, and a strange, indecipherable script etched onto seals, pottery, and tablets. And that silence is maddening. More than 4,000 artifacts bear the script, small clusters of symbols, most no longer than 5 characters. They're found on stamp seals, amulets, and pottery shards, sometimes alongside images of animals or horned deities. But no one has ever successfully translated them. Despite decades of effort, the language they belong to is unknown. There's no Rosetta Stone to offer a bilingual lifeline. The writing remains stubbornly mute. The brevity of the inscriptions is part of the problem. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Sumerian cuneiform, the Indus script doesn't appear to include long narratives. Without context, it's like trying to solve a crossword with only one-letter clues. Some believe the symbols might not represent a spoken language at all. Perhaps they were used as religious or trade identifiers, more emblematic than phonetic. Others argue that we simply haven't found the right texts yet, that longer inscriptions lie buried, waiting. But what if we never find them? The civilization itself seems to have dissolved quietly. There's no clear evidence of war, famine, or sudden catastrophe. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were abandoned gradually. Streets became dust, wells dried up, and the script disappeared. One theory suggests climate change played a role. A shift in monsoon patterns may have crippled agriculture and drained the lifeblood from once thriving trade routes. Another suggests rivers like the Sarasvati, mentioned in later Indian texts, dried up or changed course, leaving cities stranded, and yet the people didn't vanish. Genetic and cultural threads tie the Harappans to later South Asian populations. But the language, the writing, and the stories of those cities gone. The Indus civilization didn't collapse in fire and ruin. It simply went quiet. There are theories, wild ones and sober ones. Some link the Indus script to early Dravidian languages, still spoken in southern India today. Others suggest it might have been a linguistic isolate, completely unrelated to any known language family. Still others believe we've been looking at it all wrong, that the script was never meant to be read phonetically, but is instead a complex symbolic system, lost to a culture with entirely different cognitive frameworks. What haunts many scholars isn't just that we can't read the script, but what that silence represents. These people built cities with near-perfect grids, central granaries, multi-story homes, and even what seemed to be public baths. They understood water management with a sophistication that rivaled the Romans. They developed trade links that stretched to Mesopotamia and possibly even Africa. And yet, they left no boastful inscriptions, no epic poems carved into stone, no list of laws or declarations of conquest. Was this a society that valued equality, or one ruled from behind the scenes? We don't even know how they were governed. There's no evidence of temples or palaces, no massive statues of rulers. Just a consistent, uniform culture spread across 1,000 miles. That in itself is a mystery. How did such coordination exist without visible hierarchy, without known leaders? Or maybe their leadership was spiritual, or even collective, something entirely foreign to the power structures we assume were necessary. Maybe the absence of ego in their remains is the greatest clue to their mindset. Some alternative researchers have taken the mystery further, pointing to a lack of weapons, the absence of mass graves, and the technical uniformity of their measurements as signs of something extraordinary, an ancient society operating at a different frequency of consciousness, one that left no war, no chaos, and no arrogance behind. A civilization that walked away from itself before history ever had the chance to remember it. Or perhaps their stories still live, hidden in plain sight. Some believe echoes of Harappan knowledge survived in the Vedic texts of ancient India. While there's fierce debate over the link between the Indus Valley and Vedic culture, there are tantalizing overlaps, symbols, cosmology, and references to lost rivers and forgotten cities. But without decoding the script, it's all speculation. We're left with walls, wells, and tokens. We see the order, the symmetry, the careful planning, and yet the thoughts behind them are forever locked away. Like walking through a ghost town with no signs, no names, no voices, just the undeniable sense that once it was alive, vibrant, intelligent. What did they call themselves? What did they believe? What stories did they tell under the stars, along the riverbanks, in the heart of their bustling cities? No one knows. The Indus Valley civilization may be the most organized society we've ever found that left behind the least amount of explanation. Their legacy is one of silence, but that silence hums with potential. Perhaps buried in the ground is the key, a tablet, a scroll, a forgotten clue. Until then, the Harappans remain a puzzle without a voice. a people who wrote down their world only to have time erase the decoder. The curse of the Olmec Colossi. They stare out from the dense jungles of southern Mexico, massive stone heads with flat noses, full lips, and intense eyes. Some are nearly 10 feet tall, weighing up to 40 tons, carved from solid basalt and dragged for miles. These Olmec heads are the most iconic remnants of a civilization that predated the Maya and Aztecs. And yet, despite their size and number, we still don't know exactly who these people were, what they believed, or why they vanished. The Olmecs are often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. They emerged around 1600 BCE and thrived for nearly 1,000 years, influencing nearly every later civilization in the region. Their fingerprints are everywhere, on pyramid building, ball games, ceremonial centers, and religious iconography. But the culture itself, a ghost. No written records survive. While symbols and glyphs have been found, they haven't been deciphered. So like the Harappans, we can only piece together their story through ruins and relics. But unlike the Indus, the Olmecs left behind something even more haunting: those heads. 17 colossal heads have been found so far, each unique, as if representing individuals, possibly rulers, warriors, or even gods. Their features have sparked global debate. Some researchers note that the heads seem to depict African traits, fueling theories that transoceanic contact may have occurred long before Columbus. While most mainstream scholars attribute the features to native Mesoamerican populations, the faces remain enigmatic. Why were they made? What was their purpose? The basalt used to carve the heads came from the Tuxtla Mountains, often more than 50 miles from where the sculptures were found, with no wheels, no pack animals, and only rudimentary tools. How did they transport stones the size of small buses through jungle terrain and across rivers? It's a logistical feat that continues to baffle archaeologists. No accompanying inscriptions offer clues. The heads were found deliberately buried, often with ceremonial precision, in places like San Lorenzo and La Venta, once great Olmec cities, now covered in vegetation and time. The act of burying them suggests reverence, perhaps fear, perhaps closure. Some theorists claim they were intentionally hidden from future generations, or worse, sealed away. And then there's the question of how they were moved. But the mystery runs deeper than stone. The Olmecs had an astonishing grasp of astronomy and magnetism. One of the first magnetic compasses in the world was found in an Olmec site, a lodestone artifact possibly used for spiritual or directional purposes. Their cities were aligned with celestial events, their temples marked solstices, and their art pulsed with mythological complexity. What inspired this knowledge? Some speculate the Olmecs were not the first civilization in the Americas, but the inheritors of something older, a lost culture, a forgotten catastrophe. There are legends among Mesoamerican peoples of earlier epochs of giants, of floods, of gods who taught agriculture and astronomy before vanishing into the sky. Could the Olmecs have preserved fragments of these stories in stone? Others look to the iconography, strange helmeted figures, half jaguar, half human deities, serpentine motifs. There are recurring themes that resonate eerily with other ancient cultures across the world: serpents and sky beings, blood and rebirth. Could these be echoes of a shared global mythos, or something more literal? Despite their influence, the Olmec centers collapsed mysteriously around 400 BCE. There's no evidence of invasion. No massive war, just a slow abandonment of cities. The jungle swallowed them whole. Later civilizations like the Maya and Aztecs built upon Olmec foundations, yet even they seem to treat the Olmecs as myth, ancestral giants, shadowy ancestors. The name Olmec itself is not native to the culture. It was given centuries later, meaning rubber people, due to the region's production of latex. But what did they call themselves? We may never know. Without texts, we can only speculate. We don't know their language. We don't know their origin stories. All that survives is stone and mystery. The heads are silent sentinels of a civilization that mastered monumental art, mapped the stars, and then vanished into the undergrowth. Some researchers believe we've only scratched the surface. Vast swathes of jungle remain unexcavated. And why is there such an eerie uniformity to Olmec collapse across multiple cities? Was it a societal breakdown? A religious shift? Environmental change? Or were they hiding something, sealing away knowledge that later cultures only half remembered in myth? Some conspiracy theorists whisper about ancient curses, alien visitations, and dimensional rifts. But the truth is that we simply don't know. One of the most curious aspects is the psychological impact of the colossal heads. When you stand before them, there's a presence, a weight, not just physical, but emotional, as if they remember something we've forgotten. as if they were made to be remembered, long after language and culture had crumbled. The Olmec colossi are riddles in basalt. They do not explain themselves, they endure, expressionless, challenging us to imagine a world we can no longer touch. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part of the mystery, that something so large, so deliberate, could be so completely lost, and that we could walk among the ruins, staring into the stone eyes of a forgotten people, and still understand nothing. Atlantis and the sunken memory. It begins, as many ancient mysteries do, with a story, just a tale told by Plato over 2,300 years ago. A mighty civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a vast island nation, technologically advanced, militarily powerful, but prideful and corrupt. And then, in a single day and night, it vanished beneath the sea, Atlantis. From those few paragraphs in Plato's Timaeus and Critias, the legend of Atlantis has endured for millennia. It has inspired explorers, philosophers, mystics, and conspiracy theorists. But what began as a philosophical allegory has become one of the world's most enduring enigmas. The more we dig into the ocean floor, into forgotten texts, into geological upheavals, the more blurred the line becomes between myth and memory. Plato claimed the story came from Egyptian priests, passed down to Solon, a respected Athenian statesman, before being preserved in his own dialogues. Atlantis, he said, existed 9,000 years before his time, putting it at around 11,600 years ago, an eerily specific number, one that happens to coincide with the end of the Younger Dryas period, a time of sudden global climate change and rising sea levels, a time when vast stretches of land, coastal plains, shallow basins were swallowed by the ocean. What if Plato was remembering something real? The idea of a global cataclysm is not unique to Atlantis. Nearly every ancient culture speaks of a great flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Bible's Noah, Hindu stories of Manu, the Aztecs' 5 sons, all describe an age-ending deluge. Could these myths be cultural memories of a shared event, a true prehistoric disaster that reset human civilization? And if so, was Atlantis one of its victims? Some believe it was located in the Atlantic Ocean, near the Azores, where submerged structures and unusual seafloor anomalies have raised eyebrows. Others point to the Caribbean, where strange stone formations off the coast of Cuba and Bomani fuel speculation. A few argue Atlantis wasn't in the ocean at all, but in the Mediterranean, perhaps the lost Minoan civilization on the island of Thera, which was devastated by a volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE. The eruption caused tsunamis, fire, and ash that wiped out cities. It fits Plato's tale, mostly, but not the timeline. Still others push further afield, to Antarctica, where theories suggest an ancient ice-covered civilization lies frozen beneath the miles-thick glaciers. Or in West Africa's Richat structure, a massive concentric ringed formation in the Mauritanian desert that strikingly matches Plato's description of Atlantis's capital layout. Too perfect, some argue, to be coincidence. But maybe Atlantis was never a single place. Maybe it was a memory of many places, of a time when humanity reached farther than we're allowed to believe, when maritime cultures flourished along coastlines that are now underwater. After all, over 20 million square kilometers of continental shelf were exposed during the last ice age. That's an immense amount of land now hidden beneath the sea, entire worlds drowned. And then there's the technology. Plato describes a civilization with running water, impressive architecture, and massive engineering feats. Atlantis was said to have hot and cold springs, irrigation systems, ports with ships of vast size, and walls plated with metals we can't verify today. Even if allegorical, these details are strangely consistent with lost civilizations described in other myths. Cities with glowing stones, flying ships, thunder weapons. Plato describes a civilization with running water, impressive architecture, and massive engineering feats. Atlantis was said to have hot and cold springs, irrigation systems, ports with ships of vast size, and walls plated with metals we can't verify today. Even if allegorical, these details are strangely consistent with lost civilizations described in other myths. Cities with glowing stones, flying ships, thunder weapons, knowledge of the stars far beyond what primitive societies should have grasped. Were these exaggerations, symbols, or distorted echoes of a forgotten past? Across the globe, ruins exist that defy explanation. Submerged temples off the coast of India, the massive Yonaguni monument near Japan, the sunken pyramids near Cuba's coast. Are these remnants of forgotten civilizations, or just tricks of stone and time? Mainstream archaeology is cautious, often dismissing such anomalies as natural formations or misinterpretations, but the coincidences stack up. Over and over again, we find traces of something advanced where it shouldn't be, and behind it all, the name echoes: Atlantis. Some say the obsession is misplaced, that Atlantis was only ever a metaphor, Plato's warning against hubris and imperial overreach, a story to teach, not to believe. But even if Atlantis wasn't real in the way we define it, the emotions it stirs, the longing, the awe, the fear, come from somewhere deeper. A kind of ancestral homesickness, as if part of humanity knows something was lost, something we can't explain but can't forget. Psychologists call it cultural memory. Geneticists have even explored the concept of transgenerational trauma and memory, passed down through DNA. Could the story of Atlantis and the flood myths like it be relics of real human experiences, burned into the collective subconscious? If Atlantis did exist, we may never find it. If it didn't, it's the most powerful fiction ever told. But what's certain is this: the world we know today is a shallow echo of what came before. Beneath the oceans, beneath our feet, beneath the stories we tell around fires and in classrooms, lies a past that is far more complicated than we dare imagine. And Atlantis, whether island, empire, or symbol, remains the cipher, the ultimate mystery, the question carved in every drowned stone and whispered in every ancient tale. What have we forgotten? Göbekli Tepe and the First Temple. Deep in the hills of southeastern Turkey, near the ancient city of Şanlıurfa, a mound lay untouched for thousands of years. Locals called it Potbelly Hill, Göbekli Tepe. It seemed like any other rise in the earth until the 1990s, when archaeologists began digging and uncovered a mystery that would rewrite human history. Beneath that unassuming hill was a vast temple complex, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, by far. Gobekli Tepe was built around 9600 BCE. Let that sink in. That's over 11,000 years ago. Before cities, before farming, before civilization as we know it. And yet, what stood there was sophisticated, symbolic, and intentional. Massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in circles and ovals. Carved animals, foxes, snakes, vultures, twisted in relief along the stone. Some pillars are stylized with arms and hands, suggesting they represent beings, gods, ancestors, something else. The site challenges everything we thought we knew about the timeline of civilization. We once believed agriculture came first, people settled, then built temples, but Göbekli Tepe flips that narrative. It appears that these monuments were built by hunter-gatherers, long before organized farming took hold. Could it be that spiritual or religious practice was the catalyst for civilization, not the byproduct? And then there's the construction itself. How did people with stone tools and no domesticated animals quarry, transport, and erect such megaliths? Some of the stone came from hundreds of meters away. The site was deliberately leveled. The architecture includes precise alignments and foundational engineering. Whoever built it understood weight, symmetry, and symbolism. But here's where things get stranger. Göbekli Tepe wasn't just built, it was buried. Why? Was it a ritual act? A farewell? A warning? The site was rediscovered only because erosion exposed a portion of a pillar in the 20th century. Since then, only a small fraction of the entire area has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed more enclosures under the surface. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, still untouched. We're looking at just the tip of a very ancient iceberg. Some scholars believe Göbekli Tepe may have been a pilgrimage center, a sacred meeting place for regional tribes. But that's just a theory. There's no evidence of homes nearby, no burials, no everyday tools. It's not a city, it's not a village, it's something else entirely. A purpose-built site for ceremony, perhaps even communion with something larger than life. Others believe it encoded astronomical knowledge. Certain pillar alignments seem to mark solstices or stellar events. Some believe it marks the star Sirius first rising in the region. One theory links its animal carvings to constellations, suggesting the builders tracked the skies with startling accuracy. Did they inherit knowledge from an even older culture, or were they simply far more advanced than we give prehistoric people credit for? Still more radical voices propose links to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, the idea that a comet or asteroid struck Earth around 10,800 BCE, triggering a rapid return to glacial conditions. Göbekli Tepe, built shortly after that event, could be a response, a commemoration of survival, or perhaps a warning carved in stone. One carving, in particular, has stirred debate, the so-called Vulture Stone, or Pillar 43. It features birds, scorpions, and abstract symbols, and what some believe is a message about a cataclysmic sky event. Was this art, myth, memory? If true, it would suggest Göbekli Tepe's creators were encoding cosmic events in stone. It would mean they had an oral history stretching back generations, possibly even a memory of the Ice Age ending in fire, and yet we still know almost nothing about the people who built it. No writing, no names, no signs of leadership or hierarchy, just the stones and their message, whatever it may be. Who were they? Where did they come from? Where did they go? After Gobekli Tepe was buried, there is no sign of its knowledge carrying forward. Later Neolithic sites in the region are simpler, cruder. It's as if the builders of Gobekli Tepe vanished or were forgotten. Did they die out? Were they nomadic specialists? Or did they become legends, the gods and giants spoken of in future myths? The Sumerians, just 400 miles away, and 6,000 years later, would write of antediluvian sages. The Greeks would whisper of titans. Could these stories echo a real, forgotten people? Those who carved their visions into stone at Gobekli Tepe, then disappeared into dust? There's a growing suspicion among some researchers that Gobekli Tepe is not an outlier, but a clue to a missing chapter of human history, that other sites, yet undiscovered or misunderstood, may tell a larger story, that we are only beginning to glimpse a civilization erased not by war or fire, but by time and neglect. For now, the pillars stand silent, staring out across the Anatolian plateau as they have for millennia, each one a question, each carving a sentence in a language we don't yet know how to read. And deep under the soil, more mysteries sleep, waiting for the next shovel, the next spark of insight, the next break in the veil of time. The Serpent and the Sky, Ancient Alignments and Impossible Knowledge. Across continents and ages, ancient civilizations seem to share an uncanny obsession with the stars, with the Earth's geometry, with serpents that slither both on land and through the heavens. These cultures were separated by oceans, millennia and language, but again and again they built in ways that suggest not only a reverence for the sky, but a knowledge of it that defies conventional understanding. One of the clearest examples is the Great Serpent Mound of Ohio, USA. Over 1,300 feet long, this earthen effigy undulates across a ridge like a colossal snake in motion. Its head aligns with the summer solstice sunset. Its coils seem to mark lunar phases. Carbon dating places its construction anywhere between 320 BCE and 1100 CE, though some argue it may be far older. The strange thing? The site appears to encode advanced lunar and solar knowledge, specifically, alignments that would require long-term sky observation and an understanding of complex celestial cycles. Why would a pre-modern, non-literate culture encode such precision into the Earth? Across the ocean, in Peru, the Nazca lines carve vast geoglyphs into the desert floor. Straight lines, animal shapes, geometric patterns, some stretching for miles. These could only be fully appreciated from the sky, which has led to endless theories, ritual pathways, water cults, astronomical observatories, or even landing strips for ancient visitors. The Nazca people lacked flight, so who were they signaling? These patterns echo elsewhere in Britain's chalk horses, in the Uffington figure, and in the massive layout of Angkor Wat, whose central towers align with the constellation Draco. Again, the serpent. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed around 2500 BCE, still defies explanation. Its base is nearly perfectly square, aligned to true north with shocking accuracy. The internal shafts point toward specific stars. The dimensions encode ratios linked to the Earth's geometry, and even pi and the golden ratio. For a society supposedly working with copper tools and sledges, the engineering perfection of the pyramid seems far ahead of its time. Then there's the case of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, a pre-Incan site often overlooked but dripping with mystery. It sits near Lake Titicaca, at nearly 13,000 feet above sea level. Here lies Pumapunku, a complex of stone blocks, so precisely cut and joined, so massive and intricate that even modern stoneworkers scratch their heads. Some of the blocks appear machined, perfect 90-degree angles, interlocking shapes, drill-like holes, and yet no written language, no cranes, just questions. The temple complex appears to have solar alignments. Tiwanaku's gateway of the sun seems to track the movements of the sun across the year, but the deeper mystery lies in its dating. Some researchers, like Arthur Poznansky, once argued the site could be over 15,000 years old, based on archaeoastronomical alignments. This would place it far outside accepted history, before the end of the last ice age. Modern archaeologists dispute this, but the debate itself reveals our discomfort with civilizations that don't fit the timeline. And what about ancient maps? The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, shows Antarctica's coastline without its ice sheet, something that wasn't confirmed by modern radar until the 20th century. The map includes details from long-lost charts, according to the admiral himself. Was it simply a mistake, or was it a copy of far older knowledge? The serpent appears in nearly every major culture. In India, it's the Naga. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, represents knowledge and resurrection. In China, the dragon, a cosmic force. In Norse myth, Jormungandr coils around the earth. In Africa, the rainbow serpent, always powerful, always otherworldly. Many see the serpent as a symbol of cosmic energy, DNA, waves, the Kundalini force. Over and over, the same questions arise. How did these ancient people know so much about astronomy, about geography, about engineering? How did they align sites like Stonehenge, Chaco Canyon, or the temples of Karnak with the solstices? Why were so many sacred sites built atop telluric hotspots, places where the Earth's magnetic or electrical energies concentrate? And why the serpent? Why the sky? Others take it literally, ancient beings who came from the sky, bringing knowledge and chaos. Ancient astronaut theorists argue that humanity was seeded with sudden insight, writing, math, agriculture, by entities mistaken for gods. It's a tempting idea, but not necessary to raise the same core mystery. Why did so many ancient builders construct such impossibly precise structures with no apparent means to do so? There's also the question of memory. Could knowledge have been passed down from an earlier lost civilization? Not aliens, but humans, advanced in ways we don't understand. Wiped out in a cataclysm, remembered only in myth, the Younger Dryas event. The end of the last ice age, rising seas swallowed millions of square miles. Coastal settlements, if they existed, would now lie underwater, unreachable, unacknowledged. New LiDAR surveys in Central and South America have revealed vast networks of cities buried under jungle. In the Amazon basin, previously thought to be untouched wilderness, evidence now points to advanced cultures who modified the landscape with canals, mounds, and roads, then vanished. We are only beginning to rediscover what may have once been known. Perhaps the mystery is not that ancient people were primitive, but that they saw the world differently, more holistically, more symbolically. Perhaps they didn't separate science from myth, or astronomy from spirit. They built what mattered to them, and encoded it in ways we have forgotten how to read. In the end, the question is not whether ancient people had alien help or magical technology. The question is, what kind of intelligence does it take to move a 100-ton stone across a plain using nothing but willpower, ritual, and coordination? What kind of mind sees a mountain and decides to carve a temple into it, aligned to the solstice, echoing the stars? Maybe we're looking in the wrong place for progress. Maybe it isn't in gadgets or equations, but in perception, in the ability to feel the cosmos and then shape the earth to match it. The ancients did that over and over again, across oceans, across time, across silence. We walk among the ruins of a forgotten genius, one that didn't leave behind digital files or concrete, but something harder to erase: stones, stars, serpents, and questions that refuse to die. The mystery was never just what they knew, it's how we forgot.